Hello everyone, this is Atul Vijay Kumar from Amrita Civil Service Academy. Welcome back to yet another session of Prelims Master Navigating Through Prelims Questions. So today we are going to take some of the economy questions that were asked in the year 2019 and let us see whether our approach in solving these kind of questions will work with respect to economy. Okay, so I want to give you some idea to think about in the beginning itself, because while I was taking out these questions from last year, I have come across numerous sites that are very popular sites in our country, especially when it comes to economy. They have classified most of these questions as tough. Okay, they have classified this as tough based on the fact that it was not available in some material, or you can't do it through a crude way of guesswork. Okay, based on these two factors, they have classified most of these questions. I'm not saying all of them, but most of these questions are extremely tough to solve. But I couldn't agree to that idea that was put forward in the site. So I thought maybe that is also something I want to emphasize while I'm doing this video. So what I'm trying to do here is the method that I want to put across to you would involve some amount of economics knowledge, that is for sure. But I think a bit of common sense applied in a proper sense will make much of these questions easily crackable. That is my sense. If you feel the same, please do feel like sharing that to me, because this is something of an interaction kind of thing we are trying to do here. Okay, so with that being said, let us jump to the first question. So the first question is, which of the following is not included in the assets of a commercial bank in India? So I know that all those who have learned anything basic in money and banking would obviously know the answer for this. Okay, but that is one way of approaching it. Maybe I can do that here also. So, or maybe I'll take that logical, commonsensical approach first, then we'll go to the definitional approach. Okay, so what is a commonsensical approach we can bring here? So the question is, which of the following is not included in the assets of a commercial bank? So we know about the word asset, right? We know what asset means. Asset means, normally speaking, in our personal life, asset means something that is of value to us. It will benefit us in some way. That would be one way of seeing an asset. Maybe in banking terms or in business or commercial terms, asset could be something that gives us returns, right? Maybe return on investment, maybe it gives us profit or things like that. There is some return, financial returns, financial incentive that you can gain from having an asset. That would be the broad idea of an asset, right? Versus liability. Okay, so asset comes in opposition to the term liability. What is liability? Liability means it's going to take the money out from us, right? We are going to lose money, or maybe this could be if we have taken some money from someone else and we are supposed to give back, then it's a liability for us. I'm speaking on an individual level. But when it comes to banks, these ideas work in a different way because of the way their business models are constructed. But assuming that you don't know any of those things, let us see how this asset versus liability thing can be brought to the context of banking. Okay, so in banking sector, what would an asset mean? What is an asset to a bank? So we all know that banks deal with two kinds of stuff, right? They take in deposits and they give out loans. Right, we know most of the major commercial banks, or which we in economic parlance call as the scheduled commercial banks, they do this kind of job. That is their pretty much basic job, what they do. So in this context, let us try to categorize deposits and loans. Let us see where it goes. So when it comes to deposits, what is the idea of a deposit in the bank? So I am someone who has so much of money with me, I can put this as a fixed deposit in bank and I earn very minimal interest from the bank. Okay, my interest is that, okay, keeping that money with me, I might spend it on some non-sensible ways, but giving it to the bank, okay, I can earn some minimal interest, which is not huge, but it's anyway better than me wasting it out. So I'll deposit this money in the bank. So as far as bank is concerned, is it an asset or liability? What is your sense? Just think in common sense. Don't get bogged down by any definitions if you have learned already. Or if you haven't learned, all the more good. Okay, so what would a deposit mean? Okay, so we know that banks would take these deposits, and it is from these deposits some amount of that would be given out as loans. That is how banking system works. But can this deposit of banks be called as an asset of a bank? Is it going to bring money to the bank, or should the bank be giving it back at some point? Right? See, banks can't keep this deposit for themselves, right? It's not their money end of the day. So they have to return this money. So actually deposit for banks are not an asset, but they are a liability. So because at one point in time, this is going to go outside from the banks on coffers. But what about loans on the other hand? Loans, they take money from this, so there are so much of very intricate banking mechanisms would be at operation at this point, transferring some of the deposit to loans. Let us not worry about any of those things. But these deposits, when it gets transferred to loans, it becomes an asset for a bank if it's not Vijay Malay who is taking the loan, right? So the bank doesn't have to do anything. They just give out loans. They can charge interest, right? It's not their money even. So loans makes perfect sense as an asset to the bank. Okay, so these two ideas are something we can come up, right? So I think with this understanding, maybe you can look at the question again. Okay, so which of the following is not included in the asset? So which of the following would be a liability? That would be the idea being asked in the questions. So we know that among the four, deposits for sure are a liability, because at one point banks are supposed to pay this back, right? It's not an asset for a bank, whereas loans are an asset. But whereas other thing, advances means I think they are intending credit or loans. So loan is an asset. Investments, that could be assets to the banks, because banks have invested in various other companies. With all the money they have, they would have invested in shares depending on the government regulations and stuff like that. So all other things would classify as an asset, but deposits won't classify as an asset, but it's a liability. Okay, so actually speaking, this is in fact the theoretical definition of these two terms also. But if you are in a position to put some thought in the exam hall as to maybe think of an asset or think of an liability, if you know these are basic words, right? So maybe apply that the idea of asset in a banking context. Okay, so you know that deposit can't be an asset for a bank for a long time because they are supposed to give it out, whereas loans can be an asset. So it is really possible. I'm not saying that all of you would be easily able to arrive at these conclusions, but with minimal, you might have even heard of these ideas, or you might have heard the asset and liability being interpreted in this way in the banking context already. So all that makes your job a little bit easier, having some background in the subject. But adding to that, if you put some amount of common sense into play, this question should be really an easy win for you. Okay.